In the winter of 1923, a small black town in Florida was wiped off the map. Its homes were burned, its people hunted. And for decades, its memory was almost erased from history. This was Rosewood, a self-sufficient, thriving community built by black families after the Civil War. Tucked away in the pine forests of Florida, Rosewood was more than just a town. It was a symbol of possibility. Families owned land at a time when most black Americans were denied that chance. Children went to school, something their grandparents had been forbidden to do. Churches stood tall as pillars of community life, filled every Sunday with voices of hope. To many, Rosewood was proof that dignity and success could exist even in the harshest times. Every new home built, every acre of land purchased, carried with it a silent risk. And in January of 1923, that risk became a deadly reality. On New Year's Day, a white woman in the neighboring town of Sumner claimed she had been attacked by a black man. There was no evidence, there was no trial. But in the climate of fear and racial hatred, an accusation was all it took. Fueled by rumors, sensationalized headlines, and generations of resentment, mobs of armed white men began to gather. Their anger turned toward Rosewood. Within days, the peaceful town was under siege. Armed men stormed into Rosewood, firing guns into the night. Houses that once rang with laughter and prayer were suddenly engulfed in flames. Families grabbed what little they could and fled into the swamps, hiding for their lives. Survivors later recalled the terror, mothers muffling their children's cries as mobs with torches searched the woods, dogs barking in the distance. Some men were dragged from hiding places and executed without mercy. By the end of that week, Rosewood was gone. The church stood in ruins. Dozens of residents were dead, though the true number may never be known. Homes and businesses reduced to ashes, a thriving community erased from the earth, and then came the silence. What followed was as destructive as the violence itself. Survivors scattered across Florida, many never daring to return to the land they once called home. They carried trauma in their hearts, but rarely spoke of it, silenced by fear of retribution, silenced by the weight of grief. Local newspapers downplayed the massacre, describing it as a mere disturbance. Schools and history books erased the town entirely. For decades, Rosewood became a ghost, not only wiped off the map, but buried in memory. Generations of descendants grew up without answers. Children asked why their families had left their homes, why their grandparents never spoke of the past, why their heritage had been stolen, and still silence remained. It wasn't until the 1980s that cracks in that silence began to form. Survivors, then elderly, found the courage to share their stories. Journalists and historians began to investigate, uncovering records and testimonies long ignored. The truth could no longer be hidden. In 1994, more than 70 years after the massacre, the state of Florida formally acknowledged what had happened. Legislation was passed to provide reparations to survivors and their descendants. The first time in American history that reparations were granted for racial violence. It was a milestone, but it came too late to rebuild what had been lost. Money could not restore the homes, the schools, or the church. It could not return the lives taken or the future stolen. The story of Rosewood is more than a forgotten tragedy. It is a warning. It shows how lies, amplified by hatred, can destroy lives in an instant. It shows how silence can bury the truth for generations. And it reminds us just how fragile freedom has always been in America. Yet Rosewood's story is also one of resilience. Survivors endured, their voices finally breaking through decades of denial. Their courage forced the nation to remember what it had tried to forget. Today, the memory of Rosewood endures not only as a story of loss, but as a call to remember, a call to speak the truth, and a call to ensure that history, no matter how painful, never repeats itself.